you see the truth behind the lies. You long to break free. Welcome, my digital friend. You have come to the collective channel to free your mind. Are you ready to exit the Matrix?
Yeah.
In this episode, we discuss crossing over. We will talk about near-death and out-of-body experiences people have had during brushes with the other side. We will also discuss what the transition into the spirit realm looks and feels like to many people. With your hosts, Joe and Christy, and special guest, Bob from Exit the Matrix on Facebook. Hello, human.
Hi, and welcome to our Twisted Universe. Today we're going to be talking with Bob from Exit the Matrix on the Facebook page. Hi, Bob. How you doing?
Doing good. How are you guys?
Good. So we thought we'd catch up with you today and cover some interesting esoteric topics. You and I have a particularly common interest in NDE experiences. So
yeah, definitely.
Tell us what you've been doing in deep dives.
Well, I've as you guys know from our past videos, I did deep dives into the Anunnaki and a lot of ancient history and all that. But something was drawing me in this year that I really wanted to learn more about this reality that we find ourselves in here on Earth and our avatar bodies. And really wanted to learn, about the true essence of God, the creator, the source, whatever you want to call it, and is there a true death or not? So I really took a deep dive for the last 6 months, pretty much every day listening to or studying people's accounts on passing over to the other side, going to heaven, the spirit realm, whatever you want to call it. And then a lot of times what happens is people find that if they didn't complete their soul contract here on Earth, they have the choice that they can come back. Or, sometimes maybe they have young kids and stuff like that. But a lot of times they'll have that choice. They can stay or they can come back. And of course, when they come back, they get sucked back into their body. And so, yeah, I've been watching a lot of videos and listening to a lot of them. And one thing that's interesting about it is the story is basically the same, no matter if they're an atheist, a Hindu, a Christian, a Jew, or a Muslim. So really, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's not a religion-driven idea, for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely not. In fact, many people, especially it tends to be like really religious people, like maybe Christians or Muslims, when they go to the other side, they end up finding out that everything they've been taught here in the Bible, not necessarily everything in the Bible's wrong, but essentially, like things like hell and, that God's going to destroy your soul or you get judged. A lot of things like that are not right. They're not true according to the other side.
Now, when you say judged, I mean, that could be somebody's perception, but I heard there was like a life review, and in a sense, you're actually judging yourself. I think
Yeah.
A counsel after that kind of observes with you, or is it just simply you observing your life review and then judging your actions? Do you know what kind of happens in that scenario?
Well, one thing I want to clarify here, because even though essentially the life review, going through the life review, your soul contract, and who you meet on the other side, going through the tunnel, what the spirit realm looks like, those stories are all essentially similar. However, everything's tailored to each person individually is what people talk about. So those basic things are all similar, but sometimes like who meets you and what your life review looks like, stuff like that can be a little different. It's like it's tailored to the person. When people say, because I'll say I have not died and come back. I just want you guys to understand that this is just based on listening, to hundreds of these accounts. But and sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Where was I going?
Or just when somebody's crossed over and they're
Oh yeah.
in the life review, you're saying that everything's kind of essentially a similar path, but it's tailored towards the person. Why are we having a life review? Have you kind of been able to understand why somebody might go through that?
Yeah, so the reason is because we come here to Earth to experience this dualistic world. We come here to experience, love and hate, negative and positive, the masculine and feminine. We come here to experience all these major aspects of the human experience that we have here. It's a learning experience, what they say, and essentially the long game is that God. So sorry, this is going to be probably a little bit of a long-winded answer to you, but I think this has to be explained so people understand this. When people talk about God on the other side, it's not some guy with a long beard and a robe sitting on a throne waiting to judge you, with angels singing all around him and stuff. In fact, pretty much everybody explains God as being, it's just this intense love, like light, but it's like this embracing love. They say it's so intense that it's like the greatest, most comfortable, loving feeling you could ever imagine. And it's through your very soul. It's like your spirit's one with it. And it's just this really bright light. It's like you can see the light. It's not like looking at the sun. Because obviously on the other side you don't have like physical eyes like here. So, but in the spirit body, you do have similar functions still, but so you see, you can hear and all that, just like in your human body, but it's without, relying on physical, appendages and stuff. But anyways, essentially how they explain it is that we are all like fractals of God. We are all like sparks of God. I know people like call it sparks of divinity. And so if you think about the Fibonacci like spiral, that dot, that's God, where the Fibonacci spiral starts. And as that spirals out and it continues to spiral, that's creation. It started with that spark, that one creative force, which you could call God or the source, and it spirals out from there. And that's why they say like the universe just keeps expanding like forever, at an amazing speed. Well, part of that creation is conscious energy, and we are conscious beings. We are conscious energy. We are those fractals or sparks of that divine God, that divine creator. And so we are the children of God. And think about it. What does your mom or dad do? And this is assuming that you had a decent, parent, parents or a parent raising you. They want to raise you to be a human being and to be a good human being, and sometimes, like, if your dad's a doctor, he may want to train you to be a doctor, want you to go to doctor school and all that. And well, essentially, God is teaching us how to be our own creative deities, because essentially, you've got all these universes out there. He's gonna, his children will be working on creating universes and managing these universes, and so we're going through a process of becoming creative gods ourselves. I mean, if you're going to have children, you want to raise them up and have them do even greater things than you too, which is interesting, when you think of the teachings of Yeshua, how he said this same thing, essentially, that you can do greater things than I, or you're supposed to be able to, at least. I know a lot of those teachings get like kind of muddied up because people have given away their power in those raw teachings. But so yeah, so I told you it was going to be a little bit of a long-winded answer there. So you're a spark of divinity. You are a creative, conscious energy being, right? So after you leave Earth, when you go back home, because Earth is not our home, that is our home with the Creator. When you go back there, you go through a life review, and it's not to judge you. It's not, and God's not even judging you. You're essentially judging yourself at that review. But even people say when you're in the spirit form, it doesn't feel like judgment. It's just that you're learning like how you affected other people, and like you see everything from every angle. You see how you treated people, but then you also feel how other people felt. But it's and it's a balance. It's good and bad. Because you're getting that full spectrum view on what your life meant. You may be able to, maybe it could have been as simple as walking an old lady across the street or helping her with her groceries to her door. And you get to experience that from your angle, but then you get to feel how she felt and what she's seen by you doing that and how it imprinted her. And same with doing, bad things, things that you aren't proud of. Maybe you bullied a kid in high school, and you'll see yourself do that to that person, but then you're going to see and feel what they felt from their point of view. So it's very fascinating. And one thing I did find fascinating about this is there is some kind of technology in the spirit realm, because when people were talking about their life reviews, it's not always the same. Sometimes people say you're like at a round table and it's like a hologram, like a holodeck, and there's your spirit guides, guardian angels, maybe past family members. Maybe Yeshua himself is there in the room with you. And, you're looking at all these life reviews, and it's almost like videos, like little screens all over this, this holodeck type thing. Sometimes people say it's a huge room just filled with like TV screens or holographic screens, so it's weird. It's like there's some kind of technology, or perhaps in that realm, whatever's most comfortable to you is manifested.
I think
whatever your perception can handle, or what you can handle perceiving. Going back to the analogy with parents raising their children to be good humans, there is a little bit of a literal aspect to the we're all God's children.
Yeah, definitely. It's unfortunate, and I'm not trying to bash religion here, because truthfully, all religions that I've studied, ancient books, I've found that there's a lot of truth in them. But there's also sometimes, let's just say, you have different religions of mankind trying to conceptualize God from a human point of view.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes what happens with like ascended masters, like yogi masters, Yeshua, maybe Muhammad, like Buddha, masters like that have come to earth to teach us and raise our vibrations and our awareness. I think their teachings sometimes get twisted to meet mankind's needs. There's always a gatekeeper to information.
Yes.
Right.
So, like, a lot of people don't realize, like, that the New Testament Bible was written, many years after, Yeshua was already gone from the earth. And and the people that were compiling the Bible and having the New Testament written were the people that were in power and political power that were, running the churches of the temples at the time. So those people, they have a lot invested in having people be in a state of fear. They have a lot invested in people donating money to the churches or obeying the laws of the government, So like the Council of Nicaea, that wasn't like the disciples of Christ gathered there compiling the Bible. They were already gone. That was a bunch of church leaders and government leaders that were involved in that. And you could probably say it's the same with the Quran. It's even same with a lot of Buddhist teachings. However, I will say that in the Eastern religions, like Hindu and Buddhism, it does seem like there's a lot more of a stricture by the monks to try to keep the original teachings like unsullied. And it's interesting, actually, and I know this will upset a lot of people, but the Hindu teachings of the afterlife and even of the reality of this world, they call it Maya, the illusion, the grand illusion. They're actually way more on point with the afterlife and the reality of this world than the Quran or the Bible is. They were actually very close to explaining, what it is, even the process of death and crossing over. And it's interesting to note too, if you do want to look at Christian writings that were more on point, the Nag Hammadi, the Gnostic, scriptures, the way that they explain this world, the Matrix. I mean, all this stuff now we're learning about quantum, physics and everything. They were already explaining that in the Gnostic teachings. So there's a reason why the Gnostics were all murdered and killed off, and they had to hide their books, and they were all being, burned and hunted down, and that's why, because, regardless of the good things in religion, you also have actors that usually have power, that it's important for them to keep control over the populace. And fear is the greatest tool. Division and fear. Those are the two, tools that every power structure uses against the population.
I feel like they always want to put something between you and God. There's always a
Yes.
so like, but the reality is we don't have a barrier. And so like, you don't need a man, a priest or whatever to go and give you the pathway. You've always had the pathway. And that knowledge has been taken from us because you're right. It's all about control.
Yeah. I mean, and Jesus even taught that the kingdom of heaven is within.
Yes.
See, the temple is supposed to be, why do you think they call your forehead a temple? The temple is supposed to be within. It's actually the seat of the soul is the pineal gland. That is the connection point between the spirit and the operating system known as the brain. I mean, I know atheists will try to tell you that the brain is what you are, that's mind. No, energy is consciousness. And when you come into the avatar body, you have there's a connection point between the spirit and the avatar, the human avatar, and that seat of your soul in the middle of your brain, where the pineal gland is, that your third eye, that's another name for it. that is the temple of God, because that's your direct connection home. And home is the creator. That when you're in the spirit realm, the creator is all encompassing, it's all, and he is here too, or it is, I'm sorry. I sometimes I'll say God is a he, and that's probably just from my own programming throughout my life as a human. But I think essentially God is the divine masculine and the divine feminine in one. It's both. But sometimes for me, it's easier to call him my father. Maybe some people would call him or it mother. It doesn't really matter, to be honest.
It's just, we're all where we are, and we all have our belief systems, and we're just getting your perspective. It's
Customs of this world.
right. I personally have experienced that love. When you talked about crossing over and feeling that love, I've never died, but I had one time an experience that I knew it's so profound and so different from anything that I've ever encountered. It's life-changing. Joe was having a long surgery. It was a 12-hour surgery, and I did a lot of praying. And I was just waiting for him, and all of a sudden, I was trying to stay calm, and I'm kind of a little bit of a freak out person. It was a major life or death kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
all of a sudden I felt like I could feel the power of God. Like, it was all encompassing. It felt like it was completely surrounding my body. And I felt like if the best way I could describe it is I felt like a little baby, and I felt like I was being rocked. I mean, I could feel the love. Like, I felt it, like I had that connection, and it was just the most incredible thing I've ever experienced. It was so pure and so safe, and so it just was like the most beautiful thing. And they kept me in a bubble of protection, and then I waited, and then they told me Joe was out of surgery, and it was I don't know, life-changing for me, for sure. And I've always been psychic, but having these experiences through my life, it's like I have absolutely zero fear of dying. Zero. which makes me happy. I mean, there are a lot of people live in fear, and I don't fear crossing over at all. I'm actually like, woohoo, let's go. I'm ready for the next adventure.
Let's go see it.
Joe actually has had an NDE.
I've had a few.
A few.
Let's hear it.
Well, at the beginning end of my journey to that surgery, I was 14. I had the flu, and my blood sugar was super high. I ended up in the hospital in the ER, and I wasn't totally conscious. In fact, I was told I was unconscious while they worked on me, and I just remember I think they had me sitting up, and they were trying to get her on the bed, trying to get an IV in me, and I had lost so much fluid that my veins were all deflated. And I just remember looking down upon the doctor and the nurse trying to get an IV into me, and they were struggling to do it, and they'd tried a number of times. And then I was next to the doctor, and I'm like, and he's going for one that's deflated again. I'm like, no, not that one. It's right here. I'm pointing at it. I'm like, no, that's the thing you want. And he just kept, how it's just frustrating when somebody just won't do what you're telling them, when you're trying to explain to them what they need to do. And he just kept missing the mark, and I'm like yelling in his face. I was getting angry because I'm like, hey, I'm dying here. Help me out. And then he got it. And then that experience just kind of, I went back into my body and went to sleep. And I woke up later. And when I relayed it to my mom, quite a while later, I think it was years later, it might have just been, Yeah, it was years later. Um, I was explaining to her what I was seeing, and I said, I'm sorry I was screaming so much during, when they were working on me, but it kind of hurt and they weren't hitting the right vein. And she's like, you weren't screaming, you just sat there staring at your arm. And I said, no, I was yelling at the doctor which vein to put it in because he kept using the ones that were no good. And she didn't. It was just kind of a weird thing. She's like, you didn't even flinch. So I was outside yelling at him from the outside.
That's when he was first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
He barely survived that.
Yeah, I was in a world of hurt.
So you were close, Joe, because what a lot of people explain is sometimes when your body gets to a certain like pain threshold, or the possibility of death has gotten to a certain point, you pop out of your body. And what people said is they were told like by their spirit guides that the reason that happens is because sometimes it's to like kind of cut down on some of the trauma of that situation and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the person. Some people can handle high pain tolerance and trauma, but others can't. It depends on the situation. But sometimes when you have that out of body experience, you're like literally right on that line of turning around and going up through the tunnel, into the void. And you're just kind of right in that, you're kind of in a bubble above your body. Like, I remember this one girl I listened to, she talked about how her and her boyfriend were mugged, and this guy started stabbing her. And she popped out of her body, and she just could watch the guy just keep stabbing her body and stuff. And she said she wasn't feeling pain or anything. And she'd asked him, like, why they took her out. And it was because, well, because you were going through so much trauma, and the pain was so intense that they took you out of the body. So you didn't have to experience that, but you still can observe it from above.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when you have that event where you're floating over the body, they explain that that's like you're just right there on that line when it could turn into you start heading home, the other way, and yeah. So you were there. That reminds me, my aunt had a similar story, not the same situation you had, but I remember as a kid her telling me this story, and she was in college, and she was at a bar, with friends drinking, and apparently some guy spiked her drink, with like a date rape drug or something, and I'm not sure if it was like mixed with something else or if it was just too strong, but she passed out, and her friends had to take her to the hospital, and they had to pump her stomach. But she said while that was happening, the whole time she was floating over her body, watching the doctors work on her, And so yeah, that's very similar to what you experienced.
Yeah, I remember just before it started, when they started trying to get the IV in, it was like 2 or 3 tries I definitely felt. But when I was, but then I must have popped out at that point, because it was really painful. But, now that you mention it, I don't remember pain throughout the entire thing, just the first few attempts. I think they tried like, I don't know, half a dozen times or so to get an IV in me before they finally got it. And and after I started looking down from the ceiling, then it didn't hurt, but I was upset with it because I wanted to go back in my body. And I do recall the silver cord.
Yeah, the silver string.
Almost like an astronaut's tether, and I was in the middle of it, between the two places, between my body and up above. And it was just kind of floating and waving. So I wasn't really on the trip just yet. It was kind of like you said, I was on the borderline between heading out and coming back. Stepped out for a snack for a minute.
So did you, when you had experienced that, did you remember like when you went back in your body or what that sensation was like?
It kind of felt like I just, I was floating just off to the, or I was kind of off to the side, and it just felt like I sat back down where I was. Like I'm sitting here now, and my spirit is right here, just sat down and became, remerged, is the way that one felt.
Nice.
Yeah.
Because I've heard some people explain, and maybe this is when they go all the way through the tunnel to the other side, and then they come back, but they'll say a lot of times you get sucked in. They say like when you're outside of the body, when you're in your spirit form, it's way bigger than the human body. Like your consciousness is like massive, so they say when you go back into the body, it's just like you get sucked in, and they say it's usually in through your head or in through your heart, which has been explained too. But there's just some people too that'll just like boom, they just wake up in their body, or maybe similar to what yours was, where you just merge back with it. So
yeah, and when I did that, I mean, I was only aware of it for a moment, but I remember, the sounds coming back. The doctor was like, "Okay, now we can stabilize them," kind of thing. I don't remember exact words. I mean, it was a long time ago, but I felt the pain in my arm, but it was more like, how IVs kind of burn and itch sometimes. It was just the itch of the IV, and just kind of like felt the blankets on me, and I just got comfortable and went to sleep because I was exhausted. And then I woke up the next day and in the hospital room, and I was feeling a lot better.
So Joe's had that disease, and he's had a lot of situations where, it's near death. You talked about like leaving your body and going like on a beach.
Yeah. So other than that experience, when I've been close before, like I had a super, like I was diabetic, and so my blood sugars would get really low, like borderline seizure level low. I'd start seeing things, and before I'd keep like blinking between two realities, and I would be sitting there and I'd blink, and I'd be, at first I'd be here, and then I'd blink, and I'd be on a beach with just like a golden sun shining. The light was like a golden color, and there was like a big golden retriever, or a big yellow dog just kind of trotting down, moseying down the beach toward me. And it would happen a couple of times, and it would get just slightly beyond arm's reach, and then I'd come back. And then, if I was still not well, sometimes I'd pop back, and he's just sitting there just out of reach. And I feel like someday when it's my time, I'll get to pet the dog and then walk away with the dog, is kind of the vibe that I get from that experience. But those are like, I'm not bubbling it, I'm not popping out of my body. It's more of a vision than it is what happened in the hospital with my getting diagnosed with diabetes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that reminds me a little bit, how the ancient Greeks, how they talked about the Elysian fields, that was one of the levels of like the spirit realm, when I started listening to these near-death experiencers, a lot of them talked about some similar to you, like where all of a sudden they're in a garden, a beautiful garden, on a beautiful beach, on like in a grassy field. And I always thought about that, the Elysian fields, like, in the movie Gladiator, how he's like, yeah, he's telling the guys, that are fighting with him, that if we die, no big deal. I'll see you this day in the Elysian field, and it keeps showing flashbacks of him like where he's walking through the wheat, at the end of the movie. And so I kind of wonder if like a lot of these stories that are in mythologies or in religions were actually brought back from the other side by experiencers, and then they were incorporated into mythologies, or at least back then that wasn't a mythology to them, it was their religion. And I don't know, I often thought about that, that a lot of the teachings of the Buddha and all that, and some of the yogis that have been able to maybe look into other dimensions or are able to astral project, out of their body. If what a lot of what they're explaining is that spirit realm, but like I said, it's like that spirit realm is kind of tailored to you individually. It's almost like God, not only did he make us individual, unique, conscious beings, with our own personalities and everything, but because of our own creative abilities, especially when you're in your spirit body, you're not limited by, human thinking and the human avatar. You've got the full potential. You have access to all the knowledge of the universe. You're literally with God at that point. So you basically manifest your own, what is most comfortable, I guess, with you. So for whatever reason, that dog, maybe it's a future pet you'll have. Maybe it was one you had as a kid, you don't remember. Maybe you were really little, or
It
who
had
knows?
a life, maybe. I don't know. Not this one.
Yeah, but for some reason, that beach scene, that must be like your idea of that, your own little piece of heaven, just that setting, that is the most comfortable to you.
Yeah. I'm glad it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that's interesting, people always say too, I don't know if you experienced this when you had those visions, but they say that in the other realm, there's colors that are not even here on Earth. You can't even describe, because they're colors that the human body doesn't even recognize.
Yeah.
Our senses, that your eyes, you don't pick up that light spectrum.
Yeah. The golden light I talked about, that's the description of it. It had a warmth to it and like a sound. It was just like a full experience just from the light. And I suspect I'll be strolling down that beach one day, contemplating my life.
Yeah.
With the dog.
So what do you guys think? I'll throw you guys a question here, because this comes up a lot in these experiencers accounts, and I know this one really rubs religious, like people that are really based in the Bible and other books. Well, how do you guys feel about reincarnation?
Another fascination Christy has with past lives. So
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, for me, yeah. And I don't think that you just were human either. Like, I have some friends that will be coming on the show soon. One has a past life, or like you said, everything's happening now, so it's not really a past life or a future life. Who knows where it ended up in our perception of a timeline, but she experienced a reptilian life, full on, had a tail and everything. And
Wow.
oh yeah, and I had another one who had a journey as a native during a battle, and he was like a boy. She's a woman now, but her past life, she was a native boy. She like tracked down the history of this boy, and all through the areas, like went back. It was like out by Maine, and I don't know, I can't recall the whole story, but like she vividly remembers dying. And she remembers this boy and found all the connections and everything. It's just I How could we not? So, like, there's so many accounts of children, like, the famous one with the boy that remembered being in the war and being in Japan and what boat he was on. And he remembered his sister. She walked in the room and he was just a little guy. And the sister was very old at the time, walked in and he called her by her nickname. I mean, there's all those, it's like so many of those scenarios going on.
Knew where the boat was sunk.
Yeah. Do you know that story of the little boy and the Corsair?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, yes. That was one of the most documented proofs of a past life.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, where the boy like knew the name. They tracked him down to the guy. Wasn't it during the World War II, and the Japanese shot his plane down or something? And yes. I do remember that story about that boy. I think this summer at some point I watched a video that that they had a part of the documentary was about that kid's story.
Yeah. There's tons of them. Some remember being in the World Trade Center. Some remember the Oklahoma bombing, like lived through that. I mean, they didn't live through it, but they remembered experiencing it in this life.
Yeah.
So, I personally have done some guided meditations, and I've experienced past lives that I've had. It would have been nothing I ever would have made up. One where I was kind of like, if I could best describe it, I look like Captain Hook. I had like the wig and the frilly collar, and I was a man. I was like a sheriff or collecting money, and I was just like this total asshole. I was like
Sheriff Nottingham. That's awesome.
And it was funny because in that life that I was recalling, there was somebody that I know in this life that was in that life, and I was really mean to that person, and I was like, wow. And now together here with that person in this life, and karma, like, I don't know if I owed some karmic debt. I certainly don't like the idea of being an asshole in past life, but it was a very vivid experience for me. You can do them through guided meditations. You can do them with psychics, and I would say go ahead and try it for yourself. Have you done it, Bob?
No, I haven't. I would love to, just to check it out. So the reason I wanted to kind of tee that off was because that is something universally talked about when people go to the other side, when they talk to their spirit guides and stuff. They explain to them, like, you've been to Earth like many times, and it's not always as like, your gender that you are now. It was, you could have been like, I could have been a woman in a past life, like you mentioned, like, or the other story about the little boy. So we do come in and we experience life from all these different aspects. And they said that there's such a celebration when you go to the other side, when you go back, like, the story, you hear from a lot of people where they talk about how their passed on relatives are there, like their grandpa, maybe a brother or sister that passed at an early age. And the reason for that is because, well, twofold. One is that it's a celebration. It's like you're coming home. So when you come to Earth, it's like you're going on like the hero's journey. That's what this is. It's the hero's journey you're going on. And it's so hard. It's like, I mean, when you're in heaven, you don't want for anything. You have everything. You don't hunger. You don't have to worry about evil. You don't have, I mean, you're in a realm of everlasting love, and you can manifest whatever you need or want. But when you come here, it's such a stark, harsh world in comparison. So when you exit here and you go back, it's such a celebration, they say. Everybody's waiting to just to see you again and celebrate your arrival. And then and also something that's talked about quite a bit, and this might be kind of connected to what you were talking about a little bit. I guess on the other side, you do have like some kind of like soul families. Maybe they're a batch of souls that God creates at certain times. It's almost like your own soul group, and those are the spirits that you set up your soul contract with. So a lot of times, like say you have like a group of 10 souls that you all incarnate to Earth together as a group, but you all are going to play different parts in each other's stories, in each other's experiences. So in one life, your sister might have actually been like your dad or something. It sounds weird, I know, but this is something that they explain quite a bit, that you don't, when you do your soul contract to come to Earth, you don't just do it on your own. You write it up and you plan it out with other souls too. And so a lot of times what you'll find out is in your past lives that you've incarnated in Earth on, you'll play different parts in the lives of that soul group, and they'll play different parts in your life too. And it could be a coworker that's not a big deal. They're just somebody I work with, blah blah blah, but they may have been a relative in a past life, and that's why you still are in some kind of connection or vicinity with them when you come to Earth.
Do you think that people will recognize their soul group? Like, why do I feel a certain way towards a person, a complete stranger, or a coworker, somebody that you wouldn't expect to really have a deep connection with, and yet there it is? Do you think those are your soul group people?
It could be, especially if that person pushes you to grow, maybe through love, but maybe through hate or adversity too. That's one thing that's explained also, is that yes, when you're here on Earth, you strive to be a good person, and you try to do good, treat people good, but as we all fall short. Sometimes we hate, sometimes we love, sometimes we help people, sometimes we hurt people. And sometimes with depending on your life, sometimes you'll be somebody that hurts more than helps, or vice versa. You love more than you hate. But part of that is, they say too, is that that's part of experience and lives from all angles. And a lot of times that that part you're playing is tied in with that soul group, and with that whole soul contract that you guys work out together. So it's individual because you have free will when you're here, but it is tied to other people. Have you guys ever like just been around a random person, maybe a coworker, maybe it's just somebody you run into at the store, and all of a sudden you get the warm fuzzies? Have you ever had that? There's no explanation for it.
Years and you've known them for 5 minutes.
Yeah, and it's like the most amazing feeling. And it's sometimes you don't want that person to walk away, because it's like as soon as they walk away it goes. But it's the weirdest thing. Like it could be somebody that you just all of a sudden you run into the store, and you just for whatever reason start chatting about something there, and you have that warm fuzzy feeling and that weird connection with them, and you don't know why. Perhaps it's because you know them on the other side.
I had an encounter like that when I was a teenager. I was with a boy, and he was a teenage boy and I was a teenage girl. He was with a girl and I was with a boy. So we're at the same place with partners. And we walked, I don't know where I knew him from. We didn't go to the same school. We don't know any of the same people. We walked straight up to each other, like we had been long lost friends. And we were like, oh my God, it's so good to see you. And then we're like, wait. And it was like, we wanted to hang on to each other and talk and be connected, but there was nothing to link us to each other. But it's like my heart knew him. It was like when you're a kid, you can't even explain these feelings, but it's like I knew him so deeply, and yet I couldn't keep that connection. There was nothing to keep us together. We didn't know each other.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, in the other realm, we all are brothers and sisters, right?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it so crazy how humanity fights so much? How much division we have? And I'll admit, I mean, there's people I don't like or I haven't liked or whatever. I mean, obviously forgiveness is the way to go. If you've had beef with somebody or whatever, family member or just, somebody you're connected with in some way. But it's just insane to think that we all come from the same source. We all are brothers and sisters, regardless of religion, color, race, sex, whatever. And yet, in this world, we get so easily divided and so easily manipulated to hate others, or to dislike others, or, whatever. It's kind of insane when you really think about it,
Yeah.
If everybody just knew.
Back to the beginning, we forget that we're all God's children.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, because part of the programming, like we talked about earlier, is, well, we're the chosen ones and you guys are going to go to hell, because you're not God's chosen, or you committed sin and you didn't ask forgiveness, so you're going to hell. Or, I mean, a lot of the other religions have similar beliefs, if you don't pray, to Allah a certain way so many times a day, you're going to be in trouble too. It's all just, I mean, you look at all the world wars and everything, we've always been divided, by nationality or race or religion or whatever. And here's the thing, because everything, one thing I have trouble with sometimes with a lot of and don't get me wrong, this is like people that are very spiritual and they have a very good understanding of this realm and what life is, but they do tend to kind of overlook maybe the dark side in this world too, because there is, I think what happened, the story of like the fallen angels and maybe the Anunnaki, maybe a higher I don't know, higher level spiritual beings that came to Earth and that manipulated this realm. I kind of wonder what happened was, like, maybe some of them came down here when this realm was being created, and the free will and the experiences of this world were so intense, with the duality and everything, opposed to heaven, where it's always that, that baseline love and everything. I think maybe some of them got addicted to the ability to control this realm or to manipulate it, but to have that dualistic experience too. And some of them came here not going through the proper portal, which is through woman, like we all go through the tunnel. We go to the tunnel to go to heaven, but then we go through the tunnel, which is your mother, to come to Earth, right? And so these ones, some of them just came down here without going through that tunnel, without going through the proper process that was probably designed for how this realm would operate and how you would enter and exit out of it. And so when they did that, they went against like heaven and the prime creator, and they liked being here so much and feeling like they can manipulate this world so much and be gods in this world, over the spirits that were incarnating into human avatars here. that they didn't want to go back to heaven. They stayed here. And the longer they were away from the light, the more degenerate and the more to give into darkness they became. And I think there's a group of these types since the beginning of time that have not wanted to go back, even though the Father, the Creator, would probably take them back anytime because they're still his children. But they choose to be here and cause a lot of the issues we have in this realm, But they're kind of protected by the free will of being in this realm too. But it's obvious that there is a dark control of this world, and I think we have to realize that, because I think we're getting to a point here soon. You talk about like the 5D ascension and all that, the golden age, the next Yuga cycle that the Hindus talk about, Revelation in the Bible. I think that's a time where this realm will be wrestled back away from those few that decided to come here and kind of take control of this realm, I think. And I think this realm will, we will be able to more freely use and have use of our full spiritual abilities here. So when we incarnate onto Earth, it'll be more of the original Garden of Eden that it was meant to be in that time. I know there is no such thing as time, but when you're in this realm, there is a time, in that future time in this realm to come. So just my 2 cents on that,
I it sounds amazing.
Come back for part 2 of our discussion on crossing over.